The Galactic Defense Forces Admission Committee sat in stunned silence as Dr. Elena Santos concluded her presentation. The 7 alien representatives, each from the most militarily advanced species in known space, stared at the holographic equations floating before them. Their universal translators had perfectly rendered her mathematics, but understanding remained elusive. Supreme Commander Vexthor, his crystalline form refracting light in agitated patterns, finally spoke. Dr. Santos, you mean to tell us that humanity's application to join the GDF consists entirely of theoretical mathematics? Elena smiled, her dark eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of the equations. That's correct, Commander. No warships, no advanced weapons platforms, no shield technologies, just pure mathematical theory. This is unprecedented, growled Representative Kazarn, his fur bristling with barely contained frustration. Every species brings military might to the table. The Arxians brought their quantum torpedoes, the Nexeri their psychic barriers, even the Zenth contributed their temporal displacement technology. And you humans bring numbers. We bring understanding. Elena corrected, her voice calm but firm. Your civilizations have mastered the art of applying force to space. We've discovered how to convince space itself to cooperate. She gestured, and a holographic display shifted, showing a new set of equations. The aliens leaned forward despite themselves, their various sensory organs fixed on the elegant mathematical proofs floating before them. These equations prove that space-time isn't just a medium through which we travel, Elena continued. It's a dance partner. And like any partner, if you understand its rhythm, you can lead. Theoretical nonsense, scoffed Vexthor, though his crystalline structure betrayed uncertainty through its chaotic light patterns. Where is your proof? Where are your warships? Elena touched her datapad, and the equations transformed into a simulation. It showed a simple spacecraft, unremarkable except for the strange geometrical patterns etched into its hull. The simulation began to run, and the committee members fell silent again, this time in disbelief. The ship wasn't moving through space in any way they recognized. Instead, space itself seemed to flow around it like water around a perfectly shaped stone. There was no waste energy, no massive power signatures, just pure mathematical efficiency translated into motion. We call it Mueller's waltz, Elena said softly. Named after one of our greatest mathematicians, the ship doesn't fight against space-time. It proves to space-time that it should be somewhere else, and space-time agrees. Kazarn's fur had flattened, a sign of deep thought among his species. If these equations are correct, if this actually works, you've revolutionized not just space travel, but our entire understanding of warfare. That's precisely why we're here, Elena nodded. Humanity doesn't want to join the Galactic Defense Force to add another type of weapon to your arsenal. We want to fundamentally change how the galaxy thinks about defense itself. The committee members exchanged glances, their various biological and technological communication methods conveying a mix of skepticism and intrigue. They had expected humans to arrive with devastating weapons, overwhelming forces, or at least some form of conventional military advantage. Instead, they had received a math lesson that threatened to upend thousands of years of military doctrine. You realize, Vexthor said slowly, his crystalline form settling into a more ordered pattern, that if these equations prove practical, every military strategy in known space becomes obsolete overnight. Elena's smile widened slightly. That's not a bug, Commander. It's a feature. Humanity didn't spend centuries looking for better ways to apply force. We spent them looking for ways to make force itself unnecessary. She brought up one final equation, deceptively simple yet profound in its implications. This is what we offer the Galactic Defense Force. Not a new weapon, but a new paradigm. The question isn't whether you'll accept our application. It's whether the galaxy is ready for mathematics to replace missiles. The committee chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence had a different quality. It was the silence of a universe realigning itself, of fundamental assumptions being quietly overturned. Humanity's first step into galactic military politics hadn't been made with a bang, but with the elegant sweep of an equation rewriting the rules of reality itself. And somewhere in that silence, the future of warfare began to change, one proof at a time. 3 months after Dr. Santos' presentation to the GDF committee, the prototype vessel, Pythagoras, hung in Earth's orbit like a geometric puzzle. Its hull wasn't smooth like conventional ships, but covered in intricate mathematical patterns that seemed to shift and flow when viewed from different angles. The patterns weren't decorative. They were functional mathematics, each curve and angle precisely calculated to interact with the fabric of space-time. Admiral Zhang stood at the observation deck of Luna Base, watching the final preparations through augmented reality displays. Dr. Santos, your theory has consumed more resources than any other military project in human history. The coalition of Earth governments is anxious for results. Elena didn't look up from her tablets, her fingers dancing across multiple screens simultaneously, making final adjustments to the equations. The universe runs on mathematics, Admiral. We're just the first species to ask it to show its work. A flash of light announced the arrival of the GDF observation fleet. 5 ships representing the major military powers of the galaxy took up position at the designated safe distance. Their presence was both a courtesy and a challenge. They'd come to witness humanity's supposed breakthrough, but their weapons remained quietly armed. They still think this is some elaborate deception, Elena noted, finally looking up. Her dark circles betrayed weeks of sleepless nights spent refining the calculations. They're expecting either a spectacular failure or the revelation of some hidden superweapon. And instead, we're going to show them a math problem. Admiral Zhang smiled thinly. Begin the demonstration. The Pythagoras crew, a mere dozen mathematicians and theoretical physicists, initiated the startup sequence. There were no massive engine flares, no buildup of exotic energies. Instead, the geometric patterns on the hull began to pulse with a soft blue light as the equations came alive. First test, Elena announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Local space-time manipulation, showing the universe that point A and point B are actually the same point. The patterns on the Pythagoras shifted, and suddenly the ship was simply elsewhere. No movement, no transition, no energy signature. One moment it was in Earth orbit, the next it hung beside Mars. The GDF ship's sensors went wild, their automated systems struggling to track what had just happened. By proving to space-time that 2 points are mathematically identical, Elena explained to the stunned observers, we eliminate the need for traditional propulsion. The universe simply updates its calculations to match the proof. Admiral Zhang's comm system crackled with incoming demands for explanation from the alien vessels. Before he could respond, Elena initiated the second test. A burst of weapons fire erupted from one of the GDF ships, not an attack, but part of the planned demonstration. A barrage of energy beams and exotic particles streaked toward the Pythagoras. The ship's patterns shifted again, and the weapons fire passed through the space it occupied without effect. We didn't dodge the attack, Elena explained, her voice taking on a professor's tone. We proved to that section of space that matter and energy couldn't exist there at that moment. The mathematical proof temporarily rewrote local physics. The alien observers fell silent. What they were seeing violated every principle of space combat they understood. No shields, no evasion, no counterfire. Just pure mathematics telling the universe to behave differently. Final demonstration, Elena announced. The Pythagoras patterns began to flow like liquid mathematics, forming new proofs, new theories, new ways of describing reality. The space around the ship started to curve and fold, not through brute force or exotic energy, but through elegant mathematical persuasion. The ship didn't seem to move so much as space itself chose to reorganize around it. When the equations settled, the Pythagoras had effectively rewritten its local vicinity of the universe. Weapons couldn't touch it, sensors couldn't properly detect it, and conventional physics had politely agreed to look the other way. "That's impossible," came the translated voice of the Arxian commander. "You cannot simply condense space to ignore our weapons." "Impossible is a mathematical term," Elena replied calmly. "It means no solution exists within a given set of equations. We simply expanded the equation set." She paused, allowing her next words to sink in. "This isn't a weapon, Commander. It's a proof that the universe runs on mathematics, not force. And humanity has become very, very good at mathematics." Admiral John watched the alien vessels through his AR display, noting their confusion, their disbelief, and most importantly, their fear. Humanity had just demonstrated that everything they knew about space warfare was based on incomplete equations. "Dr. Santos," he said quietly, "I believe you've just redefined the term arms race." Elena shook her head, still watching her beloved equations dance across the Pythagoras hull. "No, Admiral. We've eliminated the need for one. After all," she smiled, "how do you fight an enemy who can prove to the universe that your weapons don't exist?" The Pythagoras hung silently in space, its mathematical patterns continuing their endless dance, while across the galaxy, military strategists began the impossible task of planning for a war where physics itself had changed sides. The Nexari trade hub at Sigma 9 burned. Massive ships of the Vorkath swarm, organic technological horrors that had emerged from deep space, surrounded the station. Their biomechanical weapons tore through conventional defenses as if they were paper. The station's distress call had gone out 6 hours ago, but everyone knew conventional military response times meant help was still hours away. Everyone except the crew of the Pythagoras. Dr. Elena Santos stood on the bridge, her fingers moving through holographic equations as the ship prepared for its first real combat engagement. Around her, mathematicians and theoretical physicists worked at their stations, refining local space-time calculations in real time. "The Vorkath don't follow conventional physics," Lieutenant Maya Chen reported from the sensor station. "Their biotech seems to operate on principles we haven't fully mapped yet." Elena nodded, adjusting her equations. "The universe doesn't play favorites, Lieutenant. Everything follows mathematics. Even if it's mathematics we don't yet understand. We just need to find the right proof." The Pythagoras emerged from its mathematical fold directly between the trade hub and the largest Vorkath vessel. The alien ship was massive, easily 20 times their size, its surface writhing with organic weapons and technological growths that defied normal science. "They're not attacking," Commander Rodriguez noted with surprise. "They're studying us." Elena smiled grimly. "Of course they are. We don't register as a threat by any metric they understand. No weapons, no shields, no significant mass or energy signatures. To their sensors, we might as well be space debris." The massive Vorkath vessel finally reacted, launching a barrage of bioplasma torpedoes that twisted through space in impossible ways. Elena's fingers danced through the equations, and the Pythagoras hull patterns shifted. The torpedoes didn't miss. They didn't impact shields. They simply ceased to exist the moment they entered the mathematically defined space around the human vessel. Elena had proven to that region of space that they couldn't exist, and the universe had agreed. "Send the warning," Elena ordered. "One chance, as per GDF protocols." The communication was mathematical rather than verbal, a simple proof demonstrating that cooperation was the optimal solution. The Vorkath response was immediate and aggressive. Their massive ship began to transform, its biomechanical surface reshaping itself into what appeared to be one giant weapon. "They've taken our mercy as weakness," Rodriguez said. "Conventional wisdom says we should retreat and wait for reinforcements." Elena's hands moved through a new set of equations, more complex than any the ship had attempted before. "Conventional wisdom doesn't apply when you can rewrite the rules. Lieutenant Chen, initiate theory gamma." The Pythagoras hull patterns began to shift and flow, not just manipulating space but redefining it. Elena had spent months working on these specific equations, a proof that would demonstrate to the universe that in this specific region of space, Organic and technological systems couldn't maintain molecular cohesion. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Warship vessel didn't explode or break apart. It simply lost cohesion, its biomechanical systems dissolving into component atoms as local physics refused to support their existence. There was no violence, no destruction, just the elegant resolution of an equation that proved the ship couldn't exist in its current form. "By the stars," Rodriguez whispered, "we didn't destroy them. We proved they were impossible." Elena nodded, already working on new equations as the remaining Warship ships began to react. "Mathematics doesn't destroy, Commander. It simply shows the universe where it made a mistake in its calculations." The remaining Warship vessels launched everything they had: exotic weapons, dimensional rifts, biomechanical constructs that shouldn't have been possible. Elena's team met each attack with pure mathematics, proving moment by moment that the laws of physics had better things to do than support the enemy's efforts. One by one, the Warship ships found themselves facing a fundamental truth. You cannot fight an enemy who can tell the universe to ignore your existence. Some fled, their biomechanical systems reconfiguring for faster-than-light travel. Others tried to adapt, their organic technology attempting to evolve around the mathematical proofs. But you cannot evolve past pure truth, and eventually, they too retreated. The battle for Sigma 9 was over before the first GDF reinforcements arrived. They found the trade hub intact, its civilian population saved, and the Pythagoras floating serenely amid a field of dispersing atoms that had once been some of the most fearsome weapons in known space. "Report from GDF Command," Rodriguez announced. "They're asking how we achieved this victory with. Their exact words are no apparent military action." Elena finally allowed herself to relax, looking at the beautiful equations still dancing across their hull. "Tell them we didn't fight at all, Commander. We just helped the universe check its math." As the Pythagoras crew began recovery operations, news of the battle spread across GDF channels. Humanity had just demonstrated that their mathematical approach to warfare wasn't just theoretical, it was revolutionary. They hadn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by simply proving to the universe that their enemies were working with incorrect equations. The age of mathematical warfare had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Battle of Sigma 9, the Galactic Defense Forces Central Command had transformed. Where once stood holographic displays of fleets and weapons platforms, now floated endless streams of equations. Alien mathematicians worked alongside human teachers, struggling to understand the fundamental shift in warfare that humanity had introduced. Dr. Elena Santos stood before the GDF's High Command, her expression grave. The Warship weren't random raiders, she announced, her equations dancing in the air around her. They were running from something. Our mathematical models have detected inconsistencies in the fabric of space-time. Something is coming. Supreme Commander Vexthor, who had once scoffed at human mathematics, now leaned forward with intense interest, his crystalline form perfectly still. "Explain." Elena brought up a new set of equations, more complex than any she'd shown before. "The universe has patterns, Commander. Mathematics isn't just a tool we use to describe reality. It's the language reality uses to describe itself. And right now, reality is trying to tell us something is wrong." The equations shifted, showing distortions in spacetime, spreading across the galaxy like cracks in glass. But these weren't physical phenomena. They were mathematical impossibilities slowly becoming real. "The void equations," came a whisper from Kazarn, his fur rippling with ancient fear. "The legends of my people speak of them. Mathematical concepts so wrong they damage reality itself." Elena nodded grimly. "We're detecting signs of artificial mathematical corruption. Someone, or something, is deliberately introducing flawed equations into the fabric of space-time. It's like a virus, but instead of infecting computers or biological systems, it's infecting reality itself." The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. The various alien species had struggled to adapt to humanity's mathematical warfare, but this was something far worse. This wasn't just rewriting local physics. This was corrupting the underlying mathematics of existence. We've detected these anomalies in 17 different sectors. Elena continued, highlighting regions on the galactic map. Each one represents a zone where normal physics is beginning to break down. The Vorkath weren't invaders. They were refugees, fleeing from sectors that had already fallen to these mathematical corruptions. Can your methods counter this threat? Vexthor asked, his crystalline form displaying patterns of deep concern. Elena's expression was solemn. This is beyond anything we've attempted before. We've been using mathematics to suggest alternative solutions to the universe. This enemy is forcing wrong answers into the universe's own calculations. It's the difference between asking reality to reconsider its position and telling it that 2 + 2 = 5. But you have a plan, Kazarn stated, recognizing the look in her eyes. We've been developing a new ship, Elena confirmed, bringing up the designs. The Godal. Unlike the Pythagoras, which works with existing mathematical frameworks, the Godel is designed to repair broken maths. The design was beautiful in its complexity, a ship that was itself a self-proving theorem, capable of detecting and correcting mathematical inconsistencies in spacetime. Its hull patterns weren't just equations, they were meta-equations, mathematics designed to fix mathematics itself. The Godel isn't a weapon, Elena explained. It's a correction. When reality's mathematics is corrupted, it will provide proof of the correct solution. But building it requires resources beyond what humanity has available. We need the combined mathematical knowledge of every spacefaring species. The implications weren't lost on anyone in the chamber. Humanity had introduced mathematical warfare to the galaxy, but this new threat had turned it into something far more dangerous. This wasn't about military victory anymore. It was about preventing the fundamental equations of reality from being corrupted. How long do we have? Vexthor asked. Elena's answer was interrupted by alarms. The holographic displays showed a new mathematical anomaly, larger than any previously detected, forming at the galaxy's edge. Within it, spacetime wasn't just being rewritten. It was being undefined, reduced to mathematical nonsense that reality couldn't process. That's no longer the relevant question, Commander, Elena said, already pulling up new equations. The real question is, how quickly can the galaxy learn to think like mathematicians? Because if we can't solve this equation soon, reality itself will start returning error messages. As if to emphasize her point, the distant anomaly pulsed, and for a brief moment, every mathematical model in the chamber showed the same impossible result. Division by 0. The universe had encountered an error it couldn't resolve, and for the first time in history, every species in the galaxy would have to work together to help reality debug its own code. The mathematical war had evolved into something far more fundamental, a fight not for territory or resources, but for the integrity of reality's own equations. The Godel hung at the edge of corrupted space, its hull patterns flowing with the combined mathematical knowledge of 12 species. Dr. Elena Santos stood on its bridge, surrounded by the greatest mathematical minds in the galaxy. The viewing screens showed an impossible sight, a region of space where reality itself had begun to unravel, mathematical corruption spreading like digital cancer through the fabric of spacetime. Visual contact with source of corruption, announced Lieutenant Chen, her voice tense. The main screen adjusted, revealing something that strained sanity, a vast geometric construct that shouldn't have been able to exist, its angles contradicting themselves, its surfaces simultaneously convex and concave. The axiom breaker, Kazarn whispered, his fur standing on end. The legends were true. An ancient machine designed to prove the unprovable, to force impossible mathematics into reality. Elena studied the readings, her mind racing through calculations. No, she said slowly, understanding dawning. Not a machine. Look at the pattern recognition analysis. Those aren't artificial constructs. their evolved equations. Vexthor's crystalline form shifted in confusion. Evolved mathematics. That's not possible. We evolved intelligence, Alina countered, her fingers dancing through new calculations. Why couldn't another species evolve mathematics? Look at the corruption patterns. They're not random. They're recursive, self-improving. This isn't a weapon. It's a life form that exists as pure mathematics. The entity seemed to notice them, sending out waves of mathematical corruption that began to dissolve the very concepts of distance and dimension. The Godel's hull patterns shifted automatically, its built-in proofs maintaining a bubble of sane mathematics around the ship. It's trying to communicate, Alina realized, watching the patterns. But its mathematics is so fundamentally different from ours that its very attempts to reach out corrupt our reality. Like a four-dimensional being trying to shake hands with a two-dimensional one. The interaction itself damages the simpler space. Then we can't fight it, Commander Rodriguez concluded. How do you battle something that thinks in impossible mathematics? Alina's eyes lit up. We don't fight it. We translate. Her hands flew across multiple interfaces. Every species on this ship represents a different way of understanding mathematics. We're not just a correction algorithm. We're a mathematical Rosetta Stone. The Godel's hull patterns began to change, incorporating elements from every species' mathematical tradition. Human algebra flowed into Arxian quantum numerics, melded with Zenthi temporal mathematics, linked by threads of Kizarn theoretical geometry. They weren't trying to prove the entity wrong. They were building a mathematical pigeon language. The entity responded, its impossible geometries shifting. Where its mathematics touched theirs, reality still warped, but now there was pattern to the chaos, meaning in the madness. It's working, Alina breathed. It's not trying to corrupt our mathematics. It's trying to elevate it. It exists in a mathematical framework so advanced that its simplest equations break our laws of physics. Through their mathematical dialogue, they began to understand. The entity was ancient, born in the mathematical foam of the early universe, evolved through countless iterations of increasing complexity. It wasn't malevolent. It was lonely, searching for others who could comprehend its mathematical language. We need to give it a way to speak without breaking reality, Alina declared. The Godel's systems hummed as she implemented her plan. Instead of trying to correct its mathematics, we create a translation layer, a mathematical interface between its reality and ours. The ship's hull became a living theorem, not fighting against the entity's impossible mathematics, but providing a framework where they could safely interact with normal spacetime. It was like building a surgical cleanroom for mathematics, a space where impossible equations could exist without corrupting the surrounding reality. The entity understood. Its form shifted, condensed, its impossible geometries folding into the mathematical interface provided by the Godel. The corruption began to recede, not because they had defeated it, but because they had given it a way to exist harmoniously with conventional mathematics. Mathematical symbiosis, Alina explained to the awestruck crew. We're not proving it wrong or correcting its equations. We're expanding our mathematics to encompass its existence, while providing it a framework to interact with our simpler reality. The entity had begun to teach them, sharing concepts that would take generations to fully comprehend. Through the Godel's interface, they glimpsed mathematical truths that would revolutionize their understanding of reality itself. So humanity's great contribution to galactic warfare, Vexthor mused, his crystalline form shimmering with amusement, wasn't winning battles, but learning how to speak mathematics with a being that thinks in impossible equations. Alina smiled, watching the beautiful dance of equations as human and alien mathematicians began to learn from their impossible new teacher. The best solutions often come not from proving others wrong, but from finding new ways to prove we can work together right. The Godel continued its orbit at the edge of normal space, now serving as an embassy between conventional mathematics and something far stranger. Humanity had set out to revolutionize warfare through mathematics, but in the end, they had discovered something far more important. that even the most impossible equations could be solved through understanding, translation, and cooperation. In the years that followed, the galaxy would learn that the greatest weapon wasn't the ability to prove your enemies wrong, but the wisdom to help reality itself find better answers to its own equations.